The message started like countless threats members of Congress sadly receive every year. But this time, it didn't stay buried in a staff inbox. This time, it was dragged into the light in front of the entire country. A man left 11 voicemails at Congressman Eric Swalwell's district office and said he was going to hunt him down and throw him off the Golden Gate Bridge himself. Not vague rage, not anonymous online trolling, a direct threat, a named target, a named place. And when Swalwell finally got his chance to confront Pam Bondi face to face, what happened next stunned the room. Because instead of another political back and forth
in the Epstein files, I just want to play a video, though, for you that I think speaks to the frustration that many of these victims have. Of times Trump's name appears in the files, so it could at least be 1,000 times. Is that right?
The number is a total misleading factor. We have not released
anyone's
name in the Epstein files that has not been credible.
Director, could it at
least be 1,000 times? We have released every piece of legally permissible information.
Okay,
you can characterize the numbers however you want it.
I'm claiming my time, Director. It sounds like if you don't know the number, it could at least be 1,000 times.
It's not. It's not.
Is it at least 500 times?
No.
Is it at least 100 times?
No.
Then what's the number?
I don't know the number.
I understand why the victims are frustrated, and the Attorney General acknowledged what Mr. Patel would not acknowledge, that it was way more than 1,000 times. But I want to move, Madam Attorney General, to weaponization of government. And yesterday it was reported that 6 members of Congress had indictments sought against him, and they were not returned by a grand jury. My colleagues have spoken about their frustration of being in subpoenas and having cell phone records combed through. Well, in 2017 and 2018, Adam Schiff and I had our cell phone records and email records combed through, not by you, but a different Department of Justice under the president. It was in retaliation for our role in the Russia interference campaign. An Inspector General report would find this improper and that the predicate for it was absurd. In 2020, after sitting on 2 committees that were a part of the president's first impeachment, an FBI agent leaked my cooperation in a national security case where my campaign was targeted. The president's FBI senior leadership authorized 2 statements to the press that said I was never suspected of wrongdoing and only helped the investigation. But that didn't stop the death threats or my GOP colleagues from referring me to an ethics investigation where Kevin McCarthy's chairman on the ethics committee would find the same thing as the FBI. Our current FBI director would then write a book called Government Gangsters and identify a long list of enemies. About a quarter of them have been either investigated or indicted. He listed me at the very top, along with Adam Schiff, and during that same testimony, refused to recuse himself when asked if he would recuse if any case came across his desk involving me or people on that list. Since that testimony, his department has put me under investigation with Senator and Schiff for the nonsense mortgage fraud cases that we've seen. I get it. This is what the president does. I've priced it in. We have a bingo card at home that my kids have made of what will come next. I expected that the president would come after his enemies. But what I want to talk to you next is serious, and I did not expect this would happen, and I'd like your help on it. The president has inspired death threats against me and many sitting up here with me. In June 2025, an individual left 11 voicemails at my district office. On the voicemails, they said, "Get the message to him. I'm gonna hunt him down, that motherfucker, and toss his ass over the Golden Gate Bridge by my fucking self." Donald Trump's Department of Justice in the Northern District of California declined to prosecute. On May 14, 2025, on Twitter, responding to something I posted, an individual said, "No, it wasn't Eric, and now I'm going to kill you." The Department of Justice from the Southern District of Texas declined to prosecute. May through December of 2025, we received messages at my office that said, "I hope somebody shoots you and your children and your wife in the head. Pew, pew, motherfucker, pew, pew." I would stay indoors as much as possible, and my children, unfortunately, have to do that. The Department of Justice has not charged this individual and cited that he's a prolific caller and has health conditions, although what we have found in our own investigation and his voicemails is that he has said he will employ others to do this. The president can come after me. It's fine. I'm in the arena. So are these folks. But we never expected that the Department of Justice would not seek to prosecute and investigate those who are making threats against us. And that would include those on that side of the aisle. And I'm just asking for your help to protect life, because life is at risk with the environment we're in right now.
Congressman, I completely agree with you. I know about several of those personally involving you. I believe one has been charged publicly, and there's something I would be happy to talk to you about off camera, but I can assure you that they are very serious. They are being looked into, and I can give you more details on those. None of you should be threatened, ever. None of your children should be threatened. None of your families should be threatened. And I will work with, you can come into my office any day. I will work with all of you on both sides of the aisle if you are ever threatened. And I'll gladly talk to you after this hearing about your cases. But I can tell you some of them are very active.
Appreciate that. And I yield back.
Gentleman yields back, and we're sorry for what the gentleman and his family have had to go through. We appreciate what the Attorney General said, and I think some of the things that the gentleman from California related, we can all relate to, and it's unfortunate, it's wrong, as the Attorney General said, and we appreciate the help we get from the Justice Department. With that, we will now recognize the gentleman.
This became something much more serious. A father asking whether the government would protect his children. This wasn't how Swalwell started. At first, he was doing what many lawmakers had already done that day, pressing Bondi on the Epstein files, asking about transparency, trying to expose contradictions. But then the conversation shifted. You could feel the tone in the room change. Swalwell stopped talking about political grievances, stopped talking about oversight, and started talking about something far more personal. He said he had already accepted the reality of being a political target. He said he expected attacks from Donald Trump's allies. He said he had already priced in the investigations, the smears, the public accusations. But what he never expected was that people threatening to kill him, his wife, and his children would seemingly face no consequences. That's what made this moment different. Swalwell wasn't trying to score points. He wasn't trying to go viral. He was laying out, in painful detail, what his family had been living through. And the details were chilling. He described how, in June 2025, someone called his office 11 separate times, leaving voicemails that made explicit threats against his life. The caller didn't hide behind vague language. He allegedly said he was going to hunt him down and throw him over the Golden Gate Bridge. Think about that for a second. That's not random internet anger. That's specific. That's sustained. That's someone deliberately trying to create fear. And according to Swalwell, the U.S. Department of Justice declined to prosecute that case. Let that sink in. 11 threatening voicemails. A clear threat. A clear target. And no prosecution. That alone would have been enough to alarm most people. But Swalwell wasn't done. He then described another threat from May 2025. This time, it was posted publicly online. In response to something Swalwell had written, someone allegedly said, "Now I'm going to kill you." Again, specific, direct, unmistakable. And again, according to Swalwell, federal prosecutors declined to move forward. But the most disturbing part came next. Swalwell said that from May through December of 2025, his office received repeated messages from an individual who threatened not just him, but his entire family. The messages were grotesque. The person allegedly said they hoped someone would kill him, his wife, and his children. Swalwell even described the person making mock sound effects, turning violent fantasies into a kind of sick performance. And this didn't happen once. It happened over a span of 7 months. Imagine what that does to a household. Imagine what that does to children who know their father is a public figure, who hear whispers about security, who start noticing when routines change. Swalwell revealed something that hit especially hard. His kids had made a bingo card at home about what might happen next. That one detail told viewers everything. This wasn't just about headlines or hearings. This fear had entered their home. It had become part of family life. His children had become so used to threats and retaliation that they turned the chaos into a game just to cope with it. That was the moment this hearing stopped feeling like Washington theater. Because when Swalwell said that, it exposed something raw, the human cost of political extremism. A sitting congressman wasn't just talking about his own safety. He was talking about trying to explain to his children why they might need to stay indoors more often, why they needed to be careful, why the adults in charge of enforcing the law didn't seem to be stepping in. And what made this even more explosive was Swalwell's broader claim about why this might be happening. He argued that these threats were taking place in a political climate where he had already been publicly singled out by powerful figures. He pointed to years of what he described as retaliatory treatment. He talked about how, during the Trump years, his phone and email records were seized while he was involved in investigating Russian election interference. An inspector general later criticized aspects of that process. Swalwell also brought up how details of his cooperation in a national security investigation were leaked publicly in a way that fueled suspicion and public attacks, despite FBI officials later stating he was never suspected of wrongdoing. To Swalwell, these weren't isolated episodes. In his view, they formed a pattern, political enemies being targeted, smeared, and left exposed. And then came the most politically explosive part of his testimony. He referenced Kash Patel and Patel's book, in which Patel named numerous people he believed were part of what he called a corrupt establishment. Swalwell said he was listed near the very top, alongside Adam Schiff. Swalwell argued that this history made the DOJ's lack of visible action on death threats against him even more troubling. Now, to be clear, Swalwell was presenting his own interpretation of these events. He did not present evidence in the hearing proving a coordinated effort to deny him protection. But what he did do was raise a deeply uncomfortable question. If a sitting member of Congress can publicly describe multiple direct threats against his family and say prosecutors declined to act, what message does that send to everyone else? That question hung over the room as Bondi prepared to respond. And this was the moment everyone was waiting for. Would she deny it? Would she dodge? Would she attack him politically? Surprisingly, she didn't. Bondi's tone shifted immediately. She said she completely agreed with Swalwell that no member of Congress should ever be threatened. No child should ever be threatened. No family should ever be threatened. She said she was personally aware of several of the cases Swalwell mentioned. She said at least one had already been charged publicly, and she said others were active and under review. For a moment, the temperature in the room came down. Bondi didn't dismiss him. She didn't mock him. She didn't try to turn the issue into a partisan fight. Instead, she offered something unusual in this political climate: empathy. She told Swalwell to come to her office anytime. She said she would work with him and with anyone on either side of the aisle facing threats. She even offered to discuss details off camera after the hearing. That mattered. Because in a Congress where every issue seems to become a food fight, this was one of the rare moments where both sides seemed to acknowledge a line had been crossed. The chairman even stepped in afterward and said what Swalwell and his family had endured was wrong and that many members could relate. For once, the issue wasn't about party. It was about safety. But even with Bondi's response, a bigger question remained. Why did it take a public hearing for this to become urgent? That's what viewers were left asking after the clip ended. Because Bondi's words were reassuring, but they also raised more questions. If some of these cases were indeed active, why had there been so little visible accountability? Why had Swalwell felt compelled to bring this into a nationally televised hearing rather than trust the process privately? Why had his family been living with this fear for months? That tension is what made this clip explode online. On one level, it was a dramatic hearing moment. Swalwell confronting Bondi, listing death threats, and demanding answers. But on another level, it tapped into something much deeper in American politics right now: the normalization of violent rhetoric. Over the last decade, threats against public officials have surged. Election workers, judges, school board members, lawmakers, all have faced escalating hostility. The internet amplifies outrage. Social media rewards extremism. And public figures increasingly live with the knowledge that political disagreement can spill into something much darker. Swalwell's testimony gave viewers a rare glimpse into what that reality actually looks like behind the scenes. It's not just extra security at public events. It's worrying about whether someone can find your home. It's wondering if a stranger's obsession will escalate. It's having to explain to your kids why dad is tense, why the doors are checked twice, why certain routines change. Those are the invisible costs of public life that most viewers never see. And that's why this moment landed so hard. Because even people who disagree with Swalwell politically could understand the basic principle he was defending. No elected official's children should ever become collateral damage in a political fight. That's not democracy. That's intimidation. And once that becomes normalized, the damage spreads far beyond one family at the same time. The hearing also exposed the limits of what Congress can do in real time. Hearings create headlines. They create pressure. They create moments like this one that force uncomfortable issues into public view. But they don't automatically deliver justice. After the cameras stop rolling, what matters is what happens next. Are cases pursued? Are threats taken seriously? Are security systems improved? Are people who cross the line held accountable? That's where trust is either rebuilt or destroyed. Swalwell seemed to understand that better than anyone in the room. That's why his tone was so striking. He wasn't begging for sympathy. He wasn't acting shocked that politics had gotten ugly. In fact, he explicitly said he expected to be attacked. He said he knew what being in the arena meant. That made his plea even more powerful. Because if someone who has already accepted political warfare still feels compelled to say, "This has gone too far," then something serious is happening. And perhaps that's why this hearing moment resonated beyond just another viral clip. It wasn't just about Swalwell versus Bondi. It was about whether the system still draws a line somewhere, whether threats against families still trigger action, whether law enforcement still applies equally regardless of politics, whether public service should require accepting danger not just for yourself, but for your children. Bondi's answer offered a measure of hope. She didn't dismiss him. She promised help. She acknowledged the seriousness. But promises in hearings are easy. Follow through is harder. The real story now is what happens after the cameras are gone. Do these investigations lead somewhere? Do those threats result in consequences? Does Swalwell's family finally get some peace? Or does this become just another moment of outrage that fades until the next crisis? That uncertainty is what keeps this story alive. Because beneath the politics, beneath the headlines, beneath the viral clip, this was a father saying something millions of parents instantly understood. Attack me if you want, but don't come for my kids. That's a line no society should ever let people cross. And yet, in this moment, a sitting congressman had to publicly plead for basic protection. That should trouble everyone, regardless of party. Because once fear enters the homes of public servants and their children, democracy itself starts paying the price. People stop speaking freely. Good people stop running for office. Public life becomes something only the most insulated or the most reckless can endure. That's how institutions hollow out. Not all at once, but piece by piece. So maybe this hearing will be remembered for more than a dramatic exchange. Maybe it will be remembered as the moment someone finally forced Washington to confront the human consequences of all the anger that's been building for years. Or maybe it will be remembered as another warning that everyone heard and then moved on from. Either way, Swalwell made one thing impossible to ignore. Behind every political headline are real families living with the fallout. And sometimes, the most powerful moment in Congress isn't when someone lands a zinger or scores a partisan point. Sometimes, it's when someone strips away the talking points and tells the country what fear actually feels like. If you thought this hearing exposed something bigger than politics, let me know what you think in the comments. Do you believe threats against lawmakers and their families are finally being taken seriously? Or is this just another promise that won't lead anywhere? And if you want more deep breakdowns of the biggest political moments, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss what happens next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.